Welcome back folks, my name is LastKnownMeal and today we're gonna be talking about Night Corp, one of the most mysterious organizations within Cyberpunk 2077, and why I think they are yet to reveal themselves. Keep in mind, Night Corp has been initially mentioned in the World of Cyberpunk 2077 book as an organization founded by Miriam Knight, the wife of Richard Knight who designed and made Night City. He is the guy who founded the city itself. Now keep in mind, after Richard Knight was killed, allegedly by the mob, Miriam Knight actually tried to revive the actual corporation and everything by making Knight Foundation. And also at that time she tried to negotiate with mega corporation because she realized that if you want to play with the big boys, you have to play with corporations, at that time obviously being Arasaka and Militech. But that wasn't enough, and pretty much, other corporations like Arasaka and Militech secretly took over Night City. Their influence within the city is huge. I mean, in the city center, they have their buildings. But obviously that was also a deal made by Richard Knight, who needed corporate backing to build his corporate city. Now, we have to go back at Miriam Knight. Miriam Knight, after that, as I said, founded Knight Foundation, and after some time, Knight Foundation was renamed into Knight Corporation, where she remained as a CEO. Now keep in mind, in 2077, it is known that Miriam Knight is no longer, well, publicly, the CEO of Night Corp, and that whoever is now operating Night Corp is actually abstaining the values she has. And her values? Well, she was kinda disappointed that corporations are taking over the city, and she wants to turn Night City into a perfect city which has been imagined by Richard Knight. Now let's read this database entry from 2077, or well, the game itself, about Night Corp, and it says this: if there's one thing Night Corp is known for, it's secrecy. Nobody really knows how much a corporation is worth, what its main source of revenue is, nor how many people it employs, so automatically they're very secretive. Now keep in mind, the popular saying is that the Night Corp's influence has basically waned because, as I said before, you had other corporations come within the city, much stronger corporations, being obviously the two biggest ones, Arasaka and Militech, and we can read that here. Now Night Corp's glory days are long behind it. After years of progressive degeneration, Night Corp's influence waned to nearly non-existent. Still, outside of managing its own capital, Knight's successors have maintained a significant say in the matters persisting to public administration and pro-social causes, public road works, construction and conserving institutions for the public good, revitalizing the maglev system. And maglev system is basically going to connect the city center of Night City with the new United States, which is obviously, besides Night City. And all of these projects are funded and financed by Night Corp. More well-known beneficiaries include the NCPD and MaxStack, which are still partially financed by Night Corp's shrinking coffers. It seems there are still those in company's rather mysterious structure who have not lost faith in the vision of the city's founder, even if cheapened by corporate slogans and guided primarily by political interests. The merits of Night Corp's role in the Free City's history cannot be diminished. In fact, with this in mind, some residents have expressed a wish today Night Corp returns to a position of true power. So it does seem that Night Corp all this time has been working from the background, because I don't see a reason for CDPR and for Mike Pondsmith to include Night Corp in the World of Cyberpunk 2077 book, where it was initially introduced, and a lot of that book has been, removed because a lot of that information is confidential, so you only got a small portion of the history of Night Corporation. And guess what also happened in the game? Sandra Dorset. Sandra Dorset is the employee of a corporation who stole the information from Night Corp databank, which was something Sandra wished to expose to the public. The databank itself contained the information on tests the corporation has conducted using the rogue AI to condition its own employees. The AI was designed to control not just their workers, but other figures Night Corp deemed useful to them. Now we have to go back to Mr. Blue Eyes, because I honestly think, and I really think, that Mr. Blue Eyes, or whatever that entity is somehow connected to Night Corp. Just look at the missions that Night Corp has and the mission that Mr. Blue Eye has. So this entire thing with Peralez is about controlling Night City. Who controls Night City? Who is going to be the mayor? Who's going to be in the city council? Who's going to pull the strings? And this entire time we had, you know, Arasaka and Militech fight over it, obviously with the Peralez and everything else, with a shady figure approaching you and saying, we know everything about you. We know what you're doing, we know what you're going for. We know that you're going to aim at Mikoshi in Arasaka. This has been known by Mr. Blue Eyes. How do they know that? We cannot know. But the only reason they could know that is if they control the city already. Because keep in mind, within the game itself, even before you meet Peralez and Mr. Blue Eyes, you have people who are wearing the Jinguji ring. This ring, I think, is going to be one of the most important things in one of the expansions for Cyberpunk 2077. Because not just that you have people having this ring around you and saying that they see everything and hear everything, like for example Gary the Prophet, because he is somehow connected to probably Mr. Blue Eyes, or maybe Mr. Blue Eyes is controlling him, or maybe he was conducted, maybe there was some experiment conducted on him that he's not even aware. But also other people following you around the city, because yes, you do have people following you around the city with the same ring. Everywhere you go, you are going to be watched. And I've ran into those people multiple times, which I'm sure people have run into them as well. So the goal of Night Corp is to control Night City. That's their mission. And how are they doing this? Probably behind the scenes, because you don't want to have direct confrontation with Arasaka or Militech. They're strong, they're too strong. Even though like Night Corporation might control like the police and MaxTech, those situations are still kinda too big for them to handle, because at the same time both Militech and Arasaka have the influence and the military and the weapons and technology to pretty much destroy you, so they have to take this approach. Now, after you go with Operation Carpe Noctem and you actually finish everything with Sandra Dorset, there is going to be a transcript, and if you decrypt it, this is what it says. This is what she stole. For Night Corp internal use only. The tests have come back successful. The artificial intelligence CN07 has proven itself capable of bypassing commercial, device-specific and macro security systems accessible to Night Corp employees of the lowest rank. None of the test subjects were aware of that this experiment was being conducted on them. Gary the Prophet. In compliance with the orders it was given, CN07 focused mostly on subject HK13, which at the time of the experiment commenced was classified as calm and empathetic. After a period of subliminal condition, as we predicted, HK13 began to display acute psychopathic behavior. The highlight was a dispute over coffee, during which HK13 strangled one of their colleagues, then jumped out of a 16th floor window of the research facility. I actually tried to go back and see if that guy who jumped from the building within the game itself was somehow connected to Night Corp. So far, I haven't seen anything. We will soon commence the next phase of the procedure and install CN07 onto the devices of our actual targets. So who can be the target? Who is going to be this target? In my opinion, that's going to be Peralez. In my opinion, that's going to be the entire city council of Night City. In my opinion, that is somehow connected to Crystal Palace, because if we go to the Cyberpunk reveal trailer, we are going to see Mr. Blue Eyes sitting in like a ship, a capsule, whatever you want to call it, a spaceship, who is most likely traveling either from Crystal Palace or somewhere else, and there's a person actually going haywire next to him, probably being hacked, and he doesn't pay attention to it, which I think in some form he is going to be somehow connected to it. So, in my opinion, Mr. Blue Eyes is somehow connected to Night Corp, or at least the entity behind it is controlling Peralez or everyone else. So what this Mr. Blue Eyes could be is just maybe one of the captains or soldiers of Night Corp, or maybe Blue Eyes is going to be that AI which is trying to control everything. Maybe even, I know this sounds crazy, I know, maybe even the engram somehow of Richard Knight. I know it's a little bit of a stretch. They probably have his ideals rather than his engram or anything connected to Richard Knight, because when he died, that was kind of too early for that tech, but at the same time, it's not entirely impossible. So Night Corp is conducting tests to control people. There are people out there which are trying to figure out what is going on, especially Sandra Dorset, and Sandra Dorset didn't really remember anything which was happening to her prior to that. And then on the other side, you have Mr. Blue Eyes, who's kind of doing the same thing. And when you're contacted by Mr. Blue Eyes, as I said, they know everything about you. That's a little bit strange. And because Night Corp has their roots within the police department in MaxTech, I remembered Henry Stins. Now, Henry Stins is a character which appears in the Street Kid intro where you're trying to steal that vehicle, the car. He actually comes to arrest you. Now, keep one thing in mind. He does recognize you. You did actually grew up in Haywood, but at the same time, Henry says to V that he knew he was in Atlanta and that actually Henry was investigating V through this entire time, and he knew what V was up to, what V was doing, and that V was trying to look for a slice of happiness, in his own words, after actually V has returned to Night City. Now, I know this is a stretch, and I know that before when Henry Stins was mentioned, because people said, hey, this guy looks like Gunter O'Dim, and then I think one of the developers maybe said something like, oh, you just wait, or something like that. Again, I can't confirm that, that was such a long time ago, but I do have a feeling Henry Stins, who is an NCPD and who became an inspector, so he's not some low rank in that, police, he's actually someone who's going to have proper say in it, is somehow connected to them. I know it's a stretch, it could be just connected to the intro and to the story and to the character, but Henry looked a little bit too strange for my opinion, because he knew what V was doing, and guess what, you're robbing a car and Henry just appears out of nowhere to save you. Because if you were actually to get caught by these corporates, you would be killed, and that's what the corporates actually said. Now, of course, the explanation is that, Henry and MaxTech, and they don't like corporates because they push them around, they do this to them, they do that to them, but, what if that was the plan? What if that was the plan? I sound so crazy right now, I know people are laughing. But when I look at all of these things, when I look at Mr. Blue Eyes, when I look at Crystal Palace, when I look at the teaser trailer where Mr. Blue Eyes is going away from somewhere, most likely Crystal Palace, and even Crystal Palace is mentioned by Mr. Blue Eyes in the game, telling you that there is a certain heist which is going to be incredibly important. There is a whole ending to the story where you actually go and try to get yourself into the Crystal Palace, and they turn off all of the protective measures so you can sneak in. So whoever is controlling, or whoever Mr. Blue Eyes is, he has the power over Crystal Palace, which is not something everyone has. So this something has to be something big, and in my opinion the only way it's going to be logically connected is somehow through Night Corporation, because through the entire game we haven't heard anything much about them, but yet we had so many teases out there, from Sandra Dorset to Perales to everything else, through Mr. Blue Eyes, who is actively trying to control everything within the city, or well, his organization, or well, whoever is behind him is trying to control Night City and everything which goes into Night City, which goes from the city council, and controlling those politicians. They alter their appearances, they alter their memories, they alter everything they have, so they could technically serve them and serve the interests of Night Corp. So they will delete your entire personality, everything you are, and they will import someone else's. And you won't be even aware of it. So you have Night Corporation testing some sort of an artificial intelligence to control people, to control their employees, and to aim this CN at someone. I don't know, for me, this sounds a little bit too sketchy, and I hope this is going to be somehow connected, because I still strongly believe we are getting a Crystal Palace expansion. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I'm like 95% sure it's gonna happen, just because we have the actual ending to the game within the Crystal Palace. Obviously, we're not entering the Crystal Palace, but we're seeing it. Crystal Palace has been mentioned multiple times through the game, and we know that CDPR likes to tease things before they even happen. In The Witcher 3, you meet Gunther O'Dim at the start of the game, and then later on you realize who this person is. So what if in Cyberpunk that's going to be the same thing? You met someone throughout your playthrough, and then that someone turns out later to be a part either of Night Corp or connected with Mr. Blue Eyes. But I don't think Mr. Blue Eyes and Night Corp are separate. I really don't, because they all kind of operate in a similar fashion, in the secret, and they all have the same mission objective. That's to control people, and that's to control Night City. And they know everything you are doing within Night City. Mr. Blue Eyes knows everything. And the only way you can achieve that is that if you have eyes and ears through the entire city. Even maybe controlling V himself, because you get possessed by Mr. Blue Eyes, you get hacked in some form. So it might be just that. And one more thing for the end. How many times have you tried to change the outcome of Parallel's quest? It fails. Every single time you are beaten by Mr. Blue Eyes. Every single time. He is one step in front of you. And the only way to know that is if they know every single move you make. Not just you, but everyone within Night City. And because obviously, you know, you're not going to be that strong to go like directly against Militech and Arasaka, you're going to try and influence them from within. That's what I think Night Corp is doing. And even when you ask like V and everyone else, like, what do you think? Is this somehow connected to Mikoshi? It said, no, this is something else. This is something different. This is not Mikoshi. This is something which operates on a much higher and bigger level than Mikoshi ever was. I know, it's crazy because Mikoshi is Mikoshi, but I think this is far more dangerous. It's somehow connected to some rogue AIs. It's somehow connected to Richard and Miriam Knight. It's somehow connected to Mr. Blue Eyes, and I'm sure it's going to be connected with Crystal Palace in the future. So yes, I do believe that Night Corp is yet to actually reveal themselves, because this public works and development and the welfare of Night City, purpose of the company, that sounds a little bit strange, especially because they were not shown at all in the Maze game. But hey, that's pretty much it for this video. I know it's a little bit ranty, it's a little bit speculative, but I was going from lore and I was going from what the game was telling us, trying to connect these things. Again, Night Corp and Mr. Blue Eyes might be separate entities. Mr. Blue Eyes might be just somehow connected to Crystal Palace and things like that, while Night Corp might be connected to something else we might see in the future. But their operations and how Mr. Blue Eyes operates is very similar. What they do is very similar. Who they control is very similar. And at the same time, if you had an organization which is separate from Night Corp, being, let's say, Mr. Blue Eyes Corporation, wouldn't that bother Night Corp a little bit? Wouldn't that be a problem? Because now you have someone else trying to control what you're trying to control. And at the same time, they're conducting experiments to control people, to control their workers. I don't know how crazier this is going to get, but we shall see. And as I said, this is everything for today. Thank you so much for watching. Tell me down below, what do you think about all of this? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? But all of this sounds very strange, and hopefully it turns out to be true. Again, don't forget to check us out on Twitter and Discord as well to connect and talk with other people from the community there. And also huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. This is LKM signing out. Stay classy everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.